Okay, hi everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. Thanks so much for joining on this Monday morning. Welcome to the FY25 PHL Pre-K exhibits info sessions. This is the staff version for the provider services team and the Spark coaches. This will be really similar to what we're going to be doing the trainings for the providers at the end of the month. So I'm Carrie Lee. I'm the contracts manager with PHMC. I've seen many of you before, almost all of you. Also helping me through this presentation is going to be Brittany Maines and Theo Margulies, our contract coordinators. We are recording this session. I know we tried to get as many folks as possible, but I know some folks are on vacation and need to miss it. So we are recording this. We'll send around the recording and the PowerPoint slides after. So just a couple of housekeeping items. Keep your phones and microphones muted. If you do have any questions, though, please feel free to unmute and ask them. We also have time within the presentation blocked off for questions, so you can wait until then as well, but you can also put them in the chat. And then we'll send around the PowerPoint and slides. So for our agenda today, we'll start off going over the exhibits and the review process there. We'll go over the other policies and documents that providers need to submit. We'll do a demo of the online submission form, which looks very similar to last year, and then go over what happens after providers submit all their documents. We'll share some info about waivers, remote learning plans, and also staff qualifications waivers. And then we'll finish up with resources and next steps. So first, for any new staff on the training, this should be familiar to all the folks that have been on board so far, but just a little information about PHMC as the administrative intermediary. We support coordinating provider contracting, monthly processing of payments to providers, developing compliance monitoring protocols for the system, communicating contract deliverables and expectations, and helping provider achieve those goals, overseeing the enrollment process, and collecting provider child level data for analysis and reporting. Our goals are to provide high quality provider services. We will remind providers to reach out to the provider service specialist with any questions. We strive to provide accurate and timely enrollment-based payment, clear definition of contract expectations, make recommendations for system growth and improvement based on the data, and then, of course, refer system supports based on provider performance, goals, and priorities. So now I will pass it over to the Spark team to tell you all a little bit about Spark.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I think I've met many of you. My name is Julie Beeman-Jackson, and I'm the project director for the Spark Quality Support Center. Really happy to be here with everyone today in this training. And I'm actually going to turn it over to Rex, who will get started on going over the Spark support services.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. I'm Rex Yin. I'm the Deputy Director of Content and Learning Strategy. So I oversee the professional development, some of our vendors and our partners and special initiatives. And the Spark QSC, for folks who might be new from other organizations, we're responsible for delivering high quality support services directly to providers participating in the City of Philadelphia's PHL Pre-K program. So next. It's a bit more about who we are and what we do. As Spark Quality Support Center, for any provider, there's really, how we'd like to describe it, various points of access to engage with us. First, we have our specialists, our content experts. They're a team of content experts in a variety of fields like early childhood education, business, family community engagement, health, and diversity, equity, inclusion. And they serve as our professional development facilitators and can also provide specialized consulting alongside with the coaching that we offer. And they're also the folks who collect and produce resources for the PHL Pre-K program. Our coaches support providers to the level of their coaching. They offer one-on-one coaching, provide assessments, and can also act as a concierge to guide providers to the resources that they need. And so in addition to being their go-to resources, all providers also do have the ability to access resources independently if that's what best suits their needs and interests. Spark QC also houses a knowledge center, and the knowledge center serves as that online library containing a lot of different information, resources, tools like self-assessments, guides. It also could be a touch point for a lot of things and is available online, accessible all around the clock. And within the Knowledge Center is also where you can find our help desk. So if providers needs guidance for resources based on their needs, they can connect with our help desk. Spark's help desk is both a phone hotline and also a live chat feature on the Knowledge Center, and those are available during those regular business hours. Providers can simply come to our Knowledge Center or reach our hotline, ask for the resources that they're looking for, or ask the questions that they need, and our help desk will guide them to that specific resource or the appropriate person to be in touch with. And lastly, our events calendar, which is on also on our Knowledge Center. So our Knowledge Center holds a lot of things, and I'm gonna drop a few links in the chat for y'all to explore. But our events calendar is also where we display all of our professional development opportunities, our live trainings, professional learning circle, peer learning circles, community practices, all the sorts. Those trainings are also available in all the content areas that I just mentioned earlier. And providers can simply, I'll share more later about how they can do that, but providers can easily go on that website and register on that. Beyond these resources, there are a couple new initiatives in the works, both from the coaching team and from the content team. So we'll be sharing those announcements to come. Some things are things like coaching office hours and also on-demand trainings that will be available through the PD registry. Okay. Thanks, y'all.
Great, thanks, Rex. Yeah, and so the Spark team will be back at the end of this presentation to talk a little bit more about the resources too. Okay, so let's dive into the exhibits process, the overview and process. So as many of you are aware, exhibits are documents that providers need to complete to prepare their PHL pre-K contract. These this year are going to be due on July 30th. Providers will need to submit exhibits for each PHL pre-K site. We know this is a lot of information shared in this presentation for providers, right? We've tried to develop some helpful resources for them to be able to access all what they need to know in several documents. So first is an exhibits checklist, and then we also have guidelines available. We'll drop these in the chat, and then why don't we bring them up really quickly. Okay, so this is the exhibits checklist. As you can see, it breaks everything up into what you need to, what each provider needs to submit, the returning and new providers. They are all the same this year. We also have different sections. We'll go over this through the next slide about some changes that we're making. So the exhibits is the first set of documents there. It's the six exhibits, and then required policies, and then other documents at the bottom. As you can see, there's also some hyperlinks there for resources and templates as well. And then we can go to the guidelines. We're also dropping those links in the chat. So these guidelines here are about only the exhibits, the 6 exhibits that we'll go over in just a bit. And it goes through each of the criteria that needs to be included or things to remember for providers to include in their exhibits. Okay. Yeah, so a good place to start if providers do have questions is keep referring them back to that exhibits, that checklist, and the guidelines. Okay, so we wanted to go over some changes from last year to this year for those that are familiar with the process and how that went. So the first thing we tried to do was reduce the number of exhibits needed to conform provider contracts. So there's only going to be 6 official exhibits, and then we'll tell you about that. We'll give you that list and go over all of those in detail in the next few slides. As you may recall, last year, providers had to submit a number of different policies and other documents. Those are going to be due at the same time, but are going to be reviewed after the exhibits are complete, the exhibits review is completed, and providers receive their contracts. So the required policies and other documents are going to be reviewed as a compliance activity after providers receive their contracts. And this is to make sure that providers are really focusing on those exhibits first, and there are no delays, and we can hopefully get provider contracts out quicker. The next thing is that all policies will need to be uploaded. You might remember last year that we allowed providers to do attestations, saying that their policies haven't changed. So we used the previous year's version. This year, all documents need to be uploaded to ensure providers are reviewing and updating their policies regularly. There are some changes this year as well to some things like enrollment, and the launch of free Philly pre-K. So we want to make sure providers are updating their policies to reflect these changes as well. So here is the official list of all the exhibits that providers need to submit. These, again, will go in their PHL pre-K contract. So first is the line item budget. The next is we need a copy of their valid Pennsylvania DHS license. We need insurance documentation, the program calendar noting how they'll meet 100 days of PHL pre-K service, a program daily schedule showing how they'll provide 5.5 hours of instructional time. And then we also added the 21st century minimum wage benefits, that they'll complete that attestation and just upload that beforehand. Previously, last year it was just in their contract and they clicked through that, but we'd like to see that beforehand. Now, these are the required policies that need to be uploaded by all providers. So they need to be, again, submitted at the same time as the exhibits, and we do when those are due, but they'll be reviewed after by the provider services team once the provider's contract has been completed. So these include the attendance policy, the enrollment and waitlist policy, family grievance policy, and suspension and expulsion policy. And so to assist providers in developing these policies, we drafted a PHL pre-K policy guidance workbook. It includes guidance to help providers align their policies to PHL pre-K expectations and has samples, templates, and more. So we had samples last year, but they were sort of broken up and added in a checklist individually. So we tried to put all of them into one document. So it's just easier for providers to be able to access. And then to really have the flexibility to think about their policies, to draft them according to, really specific to their needs. So this is the policy guidance workbook. This first area gives a little introduction about the setup of the policy guidance workbook, things that providers need to think about, things that providers need to include for expectations for PHL pre-K and aligning their policies to PHL pre-K expectations, space for them to jot down anything specific to their program. And then this workbook also includes all of the policy examples, those samples, and then templates as well. So you can see here that, yep, so each policy will have this setup here. We'll have the things to think about, expectations as well. So this example is family grievance here. And then in the next section, we'd have the sample for the family grievance policy that providers could use. Okay, yep, and Brittany dropped that link in the chat for you all to go through that as well. Okay. So the other documents providers are going to need, they're also going to need the kindergarten transition plan template. The PHL pre-K template is available again this year. They can check off that they're using that PHL pre-K template again. But if they want to use a different template, if they want to do their own, they have the opportunity to upload it as well. All providers need to complete the subcontractor questionnaire form, which asks questions around business status and workforce diversity. And then we're also collecting the STAR 3 action plan and waiver a little earlier this year. We're going to have it available if it's applicable to the STAR 1 or 2 providers. There's only like a few of them this year. So we're collecting that a little bit earlier. We'll make that available. We're also asking providers to upload sign in and sign out procedures if they have that available. We'll go over this in more detail later on in the presentation. And then those fiscal documents mainly required for new providers into the system to be able to set up direct deposit. Provider service specialists are reaching out to those providers now. Returning providers only need to turn this in if they are changing their bank information. So exhibits need to be submitted again through the online submission form. Again, it looks really similar to what it did last year. We will have a video tutorial available. We're finalizing that this week. There will be linked in the slides here when that's completed. Again, the submission deadline for all exhibits, required policies, and other documents is July 30th. And we'll remind providers to get started right away on those. This gives an overview of what happens after providers submit their documents. So this has changed a bit since last year. So the provider service team will do the first review of all documents, and then it's broken out into those different chunks that I just mentioned before. So after a provider submits by July 30th, hopefully a little bit sooner, but we'll see. So then the provider service team will review those exhibits first, those 6 exhibits. If they're not approved, the specialist will follow up with the provider directly and request revisions. Then hopefully those are all approved in August. The contracts team will send out the contract that will be signed, and will let the provider services team know when that's complete. After that's complete, then the provider services team will go on to review the required policies. If it's not approved, then the specialist will follow up. If it's minor edits, the specialist can follow up with the provider directly just to get those completed. If major revisions are needed, though, then they will be making Spark referrals, and we'll talk through that process a little bit. By September, October, hopefully we'll have all the required policies approved, and those can be shared by providers with families and staff. We realize, school may have started already by September and October. It's likely they would have shared some version of the policy previously at the beginning of the year with their parents and staff, but they should be sharing the revised policies if they changed it all. Okay, do we have any questions so far on any of this? I want to stop for a moment, just since I don't see any questions in the chat, but please feel free. We'll have much more time for questions, so we'll keep moving along, but please feel free to drop them in if you have any. Okay, and I'm throwing it over to Theo now.
Thanks, Carrie. Yeah, so here are just some overall tips, and then we're going to go more specifically into each exhibit. So providers should use the correct title for the city, which is the Office of Children and Families, or OCF, and document uploads must be in Word, PDF, or Excel. No other formats will be accepted. So first is the line item budget. The line item budget projects how providers will spend city funding on allowable expenses. They will be expected to report on how their actual expenses compare to their budget at mid-year and year-end. Instructions and a video tutorial are available, and those are linked right on the slide. The template was adjusted from last year. The line item budget and expense reporting forms are now combined. And we also changed several line items for clarity and developed a resource to provide guidance and examples of costs that may be under line items. And the resource link is in the checklist. And now I'm also going to show the resource as well. So this is what the resource looks like. It lists every expense, so they're broken up into 4 different categories. And so it lists each line item, and then we have definitions and examples of what they can put in each line item.
And this is not an exhaustive list
No.
of every single example that could be in there. But we just wanted to provide, providers have been asking for this for a while. So we wanted to give some examples of what might be included in there.
Yeah, and so it breaks it up by each category that's in the line item budget. So providers should complete the template according to their site type. There's a center and family version available. If they're a group provider, they would be completing the center template. They will complete the top portion of the form, which includes the site name, the person completing the form, and the submission date. Then they will complete slot allocation and total budget amount based on their notice of award. And they should make sure the total award amount matches the total of line items. Any budgeted amount that is outside of the suggested ranges needs sufficient detailed justification. If it is outside the range, providers need to specify and explaining why. And now I'm going to show the line item budget. So this is the center version, and there's also the family version available as well. So the top part, providers will pick their site name based on a drop down. So they'll pick their site name, they'll put the name of the person completing the form, the date of submission, and then their total budget amount and total number of slots based on their notice of awards. And then column A is the budget expenditures. So these are just a list of different expenses. It's broken up into categories. So program staff expenses, program other expenses, occupancy expenses, and other expenses. And then in column B, they will put the budget amount for each of those expenses. Column C will automatically populate based on their total budget amount and the number that they put in column B, so they don't need to put anything in column C. Column D is the allowable range, and so they don't need to put anything in here either. And then column E is where they will put the detailed justifications if the percentage is higher or lower than the allowable range in column D. The change that we made from last year is that we've combined the line item budget and the expense reporting template. So the amounts that they put in column B for their line item budget will now automatically populate into column B here for their expense report. So when they fill out their mid-year and their year-end, the approved annual budget amount that they put in their line item budget will automatically populate here in column B.
And previously, we didn't send out like the mid-year template until closer to when it's due. Hopefully, providers will see this and see the opportunity, and we'll remind us of this, to be able to capture expenses as they move along throughout the year. And really, hopefully, to be able to track like how they're spending and then adjust accordingly.
Okay, so the next is the DHS license. Providers need to submit their current DHS license or Department of Education license if they have one, and make sure that it's not expired. We understand that some may have a license that is expired for reasons outside of their control. If expired, providers should submit what they have, and their provider service specialist will follow up. And we just ask that when their license is no longer expired, they submit an updated one for their file.
Okay,
No.
everybody's favorite insurance. It's often the trickiest of the exhibits. But all providers need to have insurance, right? This protects their business from unexpected costs, which could come from accidents, damages, natural disasters, or lawsuits. And the city specifies, so as a city contractor, they are all required to have the appropriate level of insurance for their business. We will remind providers that we don't need the full policy to just submit the insurance certificate. And so on the next slide, we did receive some clarification, some helpful clarification last year from PHMC contracts upstairs. And we received additional information this year on the insurance that providers need to have. So they should focus on having these three that are on the slide, right? General liability, workers' compensation, and auto insurance if they meet that. So for general liability, this is base coverage that all providers need to have. For workers' compensation, this is coverage needed for businesses with employees in Pennsylvania. This may be waived if the subcontractor is the sole employee. And then for auto insurance, if providers rent a vehicle and they're driving, they need the appropriate auto insurance. If they're taking children on SEPTA or chartering a bus, they don't need insurance. They should just be asking the charter company if they're chartering a bus, if they have the appropriate insurance. It's the same auto attestation this year as last year. It needs to be completed if they are not transporting children. And there's Theo will show you in a bit, there's just a little area where they can upload that separately too on the submission form. And so professional liability insurance and fidelity bond or criminal insurance are no longer needed. So please, we'll just focus on those three insurance components. So we will remind providers to reference Article 7 that lays out all the insurance needed to list PHMC and the city on their insurance. Make sure their insurance has not expired, especially the workers' compensation. Have adequate coverage for each required insurance component, and then list each location on the insurance document if coverage is for the legal entity. And then we have the city and PHMC's address there for providers, and also for those if they provide services to school district students or in a school district facility, the school district also needs to be on their insurance.
Okay, so next is the program calendar. So providers should schedule a minimum of 180 days of PHL pre-K service between September 1st, 2024 and June 30th, 2025. The first day of school may begin before September 1st. However, the first invoicing period will be for September. Early dismissal days do not count towards the 180 days. And additionally, snow days or provider scheduled cancellations must be made up to ensure the full number of 180 days is met. So here's a sample of a PHL pre-K program calendar. It includes the 180 days. It represents a start date of August 26, 2024, which aligns with the School District of Philadelphia start date, and an ending date of June 6, 2025. It clearly identifies a start date and ending date and the dates that the school is closed. And providers should make sure that they have an adequate amount of wiggle room to allot for emergencies or unscheduled closings to ensure that the 180 days are still met within the date parameters. So next is the daily schedule. There should be 5.5 hours per day of developmentally appropriate instructional time in each PHL pre-K day. This should include at least 60 minutes of physical activity. What's not included in the 5.5 hours, which you can see on the slide, is arrival and departure time and nap time. If any part of the PHL pre-K day occurs before 7:30 a.m. or after 4:30 p.m., a written request must be submitted to PHMC for approval by OCF prior to the classroom opening. And providers can send that request to the PHL pre-K inbox at phlprek@phmc.org and inform their provider service specialist. So here's an example of what a schedule might look like. You can see that it includes 5.5 hours, and you'll see that nap time and arrival and dismissal time isn't included in that 5.5 hours. So next is the 21st century minimum wage benefit. Providers must comply with the 21st century minimum wage benefit for PHL pre-K staff. This will increase to $16.35 this year. For more information on this, providers should review the code and notification from the city that's linked here, and it's also linked on the checklist. Exemptions to this include agencies with 5 or fewer employees, nonprofits with a contract award of less than $100,000. And if providers are unable to meet the requirement, they should request a temporary waiver with the city, and that they can request from us. So now we're going to stop if anyone has any questions.
Okay, it doesn't look like there's any in the chat. Okay, well, why don't we keep moving along, since we still have a bit to cover. So Brittany's gonna take us through those required policies. So we finished with the official exhibits. Those will be in the PHL pre-K contract. Now we'll move on to the required policies. Again, submitted at the same time as exhibits, but reviewed after.
All right, thank you, Carrie. Like you stated, we will move into the required policies and what needs to be included with each submission. So the PHL pre-K policy guidance workbook, just to start, this is a shift for FY25, as all the required policies will still be due at the same time of the exhibits, which will be July 30th again. However, they're not going to be reviewed until the beginning of the school year, and it will now be a compliance activity. As we showed you in the beginning of the presentation, the PHL policy guidance workbook, it was created to provide guidance to providers in the development of their policies that align with PHL pre-K requirements and expectations. Throughout the workbook, there is samples and templates to help them. And the purpose for this workbook, again, is to make sure that providers are taking ownership and really tailor their policies to not just the PHL pre-K guidelines, but their individual facility as well. All right, so the attendance policy. The attendance policy helps to establish clear procedures and expectations for enrolled children along with their families around daily attendance. The importance of regular attendance is to ensure that each child receives optimal learning experience for preschool along with receiving an adequate program dosage. Additionally, your policy should reference some of the following outliers. The attendance policy should identify a daily process for parents and guardians to sign in and sign out their children. The policy should state PHL pre-K enrolled children should begin the program within 7 days after the enrollment is approved by PHMC. The policy will also outline the process families should use to notify the center if the child should be absent. There does need to be an adherence to the Center for Disease Control, the Office of Development of Early Learning, the City of Philadelphia, and Caring for Our Children guidance around health-related exclusions. The policy will describe the program's intent to deliver, document support, and remediate chronic and consecutive absent issues prior to the child being withdrawn from the program. A child who is absent for 30 days or more without prior approval from the program director and the PHL pre-K intermediary may be discharged and placed on the wait list if the interested child will potentially re-enroll and if a slot becomes available. If providers have a child that has been absent for 30 days, they should communicate this to PHMC as well, specifically through their provider service specialists. PHMC should be notified of any chronic or extended absences that they will need to be reviewed by OCF on a case-by-case scenario before a child can be discharged. So the enrollment waitlist policy. The next policy is the enrollment and waitlist. This offers a first opportunity to introduce families to the provider's philosophy, program, and intake policies. It sets the tone for the relationship with families, and it provides an opportunity to obtain initial necessary information, forms, and documentation.
So there were several changes from FY24 to FY25 around enrollment, the launch of free Philly pre-K online applications, and then also updates to the conversion language and converting children from specifically subsidy or private pay. So just wanted to remind everybody, of those changes and the conversion, specifically saying that any child that participates through subsidy or private pay may age in or convert to PHL pre-K if they're receiving pre-K services under those funding sources when they become age eligible. So in reviews of enrollment and wait list policies, we'll remind providers to, make sure to reflect these changes in their policies, but also, for you all for the review of it to make sure that you're looking for that there isn't inaccurate information in there.
Thank you, Carrie. So a lot of the providers will have went through the enrollment training. So this will be a review for them as far as some of the key points that their enrollment and waitlist policy should encompass. This policy outlines eligibility requirements specifically around age and residency. This policy will need to clearly identify that PHMC is a free program and does not require any additional fees associated with the enrollment. This policy will need to clearly outline the program's process and priority for enrollment. Additionally, it will discuss additional funding and or wraparound care options as they are needed by different families. And this policy will also explain the priority of waitlisted applicants and follows the order in which they will be received and processed. The enrollment waitlist policy should also state other additional documentation that may be needed prior to the child's start of the program as well. The family grievance policy. This policy helps to ensure that families' concerns and grievances are addressed with respect and fairness and are resolved in a consistent and timely manner. The family grievance policy should include an appropriate communication method for families to document their grievances, either in email, letter, or however the facility wishes to receive that communication. It will also identify the steps a parent or guardian should follow to resolve such issues or concerns. This policy will also provide and identify which exact staff members will be in receipt of these grievances from the families, a timeline, and how it will be resolved going forward. And lastly, additionally, this policy will include the strategies the programs will use to ensure that the confidentiality of the families filing the grievance is upheld, as well as being treated with fairness. The suspension and expulsion policy. This policy ensures that children with varying abilities have and maintain access to high-quality early learning programs that meet their needs. Providers are not permitted to suspend or expel an enrolled child. They must instead work to develop an intervention or transition plan that engages families and supports the well-being of the child as well as the school and their readiness to document behavior and strategies to support that child. If a provider determines that an enrolled child poses a risk to the safety or well-being of other children, the provider will need to communicate this concern to PHMC and their contract entity. We do have a new sample in the policy workbook that we showed you earlier as well. And before we move on, we just want to say thank you to the work group who actually put this suspension and expulsion policy together. Very appreciated. All right, so some additional outliers for the suspension and expulsion policy it demonstrates the communication in which families need to identify their concerns. Again, as we stated before, providers are not permitted to suspend or expel an enrolled child. They must instead develop intervention or transition plan that engages the family and supports the well-being of the child. Once again, if they do present an enrolled child that poses a risk, they will need to contact PHMC or their respective contract entity. And then again, if once you do the review of the policies, if it is identified that a center does need additional support, we will be making referral to Spark Quality Support to get them one-on-one support. So we also have provided some resources to providers to reference as they construct all their policies. Specifically for this one, there is some communication from Octel and the implementation of support and guidelines, as well as many definitions of suspension and expulsion, all of it which can be found in the PHL policy guidance workbook that we did construct. We'll stop again for questions.
Okay, no questions so far. We got a quiet group on a Monday morning. Okay, so why don't we move along to other documents? First is the kindergarten transition plan. This helps to promote engagement and understanding of educational options for families with children that are going into kindergarten. It documents activities throughout the program year. This will support with this transition. So here's a similar template to we had last year. Providers again can indicate if they're using this template through the online submission form. They can just check off that box, or if they'd like to upload their own, they are able to do that. We just want to make sure it includes the following. If they do upload their own, it needs to have a date of plan creation, the child's name, parent, guardian, and staff completing the plan. Include people responsible for activities, target dates, and completion dates for all tasks and responsibilities. And then remember to include required deadlines and childcare data entry. And those are all available in the sample as well. Next are the subcontractor questionnaire. Is there a snapshot of the form there? They can download it from the checklist and then upload that when they're finished. This includes questions around business status and workforce diversity. So we're also asking for sign in and sign out procedures if providers have one available. These are going to be used, they're going to be reviewed by the provider service specialist to ensure providers are able to produce and submit daily sign in and sign out sheets quarterly. If one isn't available and procedures need revising, Spark referrals will be made. Here is a snapshot of the STAR 3 waiver and action plan. STAR 1 and 2 providers need to complete this plan. It's due at the same time as well, July 30th. As growth providers need to reach STAR 3 status in a timeline that's determined by HMC and approved by OCF. And they will get a lot of support from Spark Quality Support Center as well as ELRC coaches. Here are the fiscal documents that all those new providers need: an ACH credit card authorization form, copy of voided check or letter from their bank account for account verification, and a W-9 form. Again, this is mainly for new providers that need direct deposit accounts or for returning providers if their bank account information has changed. And here are links again to all of the things that we talked about previously, like the main documents that we want to refer providers back to if they have questions or can't find something. It will usually be in either the checklist, the guidelines, or the PHL Pre-K policy guidance workbook. Okay, now Theo is going to go over a quick view of the online submission form.
Thanks, Carrie. Yes, so I will be going over the online submission form. So when providers click on the link, it will take them here. So if they are returning providers and they already have an account, they can log in. If they are new providers and they don't have an account, they can create one here. If a returning provider doesn't remember their password, they can click lost password and it will prompt them to reset it. if they don't know how to reset their password, they can also email the inbox and we can reset it for them.
And I should say the link for this is going to be in the checklist. It's going to run in the provider update after, exhibits training goes through. So it will be in multiple places for providers to be able to find that.
Yep. Okay, so once they log in, they will click to begin a new submission. And then this is the submission form. So it gives a little bit of information about what this form is being used for, and it gives them the due date, which is July 30th. And then here is the information. So they will put the name of the person completing the form, their first and last name, their email address, their legal entity name, their site name, the site address where children will be served, their childware site ID. This can be found in childware on their home dashboard. And then they will put the name and email address of their contract signatory. And this is the person who is authorized to sign their PHL pre-K contract. And then they will be able to upload their exhibits. So they will click which exhibit they would like to upload. So if they want to upload their line item budget, they will click that, and there will be a drop down where they will be able to upload it. So they can do that for each of the exhibits that they would like to upload. Next is certificate of insurance. So here they can upload their certificate of insurance. We also added additional upload spaces for insurance documents because we know they have to submit different types of insurance, and sometimes those are in different documents and they're not able to combine them. So if they have additional insurance documentation that they would like to upload, they can do it here. They can click insurance documentation for both of them if they have 3 documents, and they can upload those additional insurance documentation here. Next is the automobile insurance attestation, if applicable. They can click here to download the attestation form. So they'll click, and then in another window, the attestation will populate. So they will just need to complete this, save it, and then they can upload it here. And the same with the 21st century minimum wage attestation. The attestation is here. They'll just fill it out and then upload it. Next is the required policies. So it's the same as with the exhibits. They will click which they would like to upload, and then a drop-down will populate for them to be able to upload each of their policies. Next are the other documents, the kindergarten transition plan. So they can either attest that they're using the PHL pre-K template, and if they attest to that, then they don't have to upload anything. If they want to use their own transition plan template, then they will click that option and they will be able to upload their kindergarten transition plan. Next is the subcontractor questionnaire. So they will click here to download the questionnaire, and then they can complete it and upload it. And then we're also asking, as Carrie mentioned, if they have sign-in, sign-out procedures for families and staff. So if they say yes, they will have the option to upload their policy. And if they say no, then they don't have to do anything further. Down here, there are 2 buttons. There's save and finalize. Save and finalize is what sends the submission to us. Saving is just they can save it and come back into it. They don't need to have everything completed in order to save and finalize it. If they're still, let's say, waiting for an insurance document, they can save and finalize it, and then they can go back in and edit it once they are finished, and once they have the things that they need to complete it. Up here, there's also a manage collaborators button. So they will click this if maybe multiple people at the site wants the ability to edit the one submission. So they can click manage collaborators. And then it shows who is currently working on the submission, but you can click add collaborator and you can add the first, last name, and the email address of the person that they would like to be able to also work on the submission. Only the primary collaborator will be allowed to submit it though. So if you have somebody, if the provider wants somebody else to be able to upload some documentation, they can do that, but that person that they add will not be able to submit the submission. So once they save and finalize it and it gets submitted to us, they can go back into the submission to update it by going to their complete submissions on the side. It shows when it was last updated, and then here there's some actions. So if they just want to view the submission, they can do that. They can just click view it. You're not able to edit it from this screen. You'll have to click here to make edits in this yellow bar. And if they click this, then it goes into mode where they can edit it. If they go back to complete and they click edit, then it will just take them directly to where they can edit it. And if they are a legal entity that has multiple sites, they can copy their application or their submission. So they can click copy and it will create an exact copy of their submission. They just have to make sure that they are removing any documents that do not apply to that new site. So if they copy their submission for another site, they just have to make sure that before they submit that submission, that they, change their line item budget and change anything that they need to that is to that site specific. And also for uploads, for each, like for their line item budget, let's say for each upload, they can only upload one document. So let's say they uploaded their line item budget, but it needs some revisions. When they go back in, they just have to delete what is currently uploaded in order to upload a new document. So they have to click this little this delete button, this little blue trash can, delete their upload, and then they'll be able to re-upload a new document. And if at any point providers have technical questions, they are more than welcome to email the inbox and we will be happy to help them. Does anyone have any questions about the submission form?
Okay, so let's go on to the review process. So this is after the provider submits all the documents. We will be doing a more detailed review process for our provider services team on Thursday, specific to which is what you all need to do. So we're just giving an overview, like high level overview here. So the next slide is a timeline. It's basically the provider timeline that we were showing them in the beginning. This is for the review process. So just those green bubbles, right? So after the provider submits their exhibits and required policies by the 30th, then the provider services team will do that review of those exhibits, follow up with the providers, get them to revise it. After they're approved, contracts team will provide their contract. We'll let the provider services team know when that's completed and signed. Then after that, the provider services team can go back in to open water to review the policies. If only minor revisions are needed, the provider services team can follow up directly with the provider to do that. If there are major revisions that are needed, they'll make spark referrals through the contracts team. Will make bulk referrals weekly, and then and then hopefully those are all be approved, and then we will those will be finalized. So this is mainly information about the Spark referral process. So those are during the required policies review, right? So the provider services team, again, are going to review the policies. If major revisions are needed, the contracts team will make weekly bulk referrals. The Spark coaches will then follow up to provide assistance to the providers around those revisions. And we want to make sure we stay in close contact with each other about what's going on and the status of those. So we will put together sort of bi-weekly meetings. We'll talk to Spark about who needs to be involved from their end, who needs to, and we'll figure out who needs to be involved from our end as well. About Spark and PHMC referral meetings to check in on the status. And those will be bi-weekly until like all of them are approved. Okay, now we will go into the waivers, remote learning plans, and staff qualifications.
Right, so for curriculum, assessment, and developmental screening, the requirements for PHL pre-K include using creative curriculum, teaching strategies goal, ages and stages questionnaires, the 3rd edition, and ages and stages questionnaires, social emotional. All right, as we continue, waivers can be submitted to use as an alternative curriculum or tools. Waivers must be submitted to PHMC and be approved by OCF. The link for you to share with your providers is on the screen, and it will be coming out in the weekly provider updates as well. Curriculum and assessment waivers. Providers can no longer need to participate in PHL pre-K for a year in order to be eligible to submit a waiver.
And this change happened last year, so it's the same thing.
As far as developmental screening, you need to participate in PHL pre-K for a year in order to be eligible to submit a waiver for developmental screening though. Remote learning. PHL pre-K services are expected to be offered in person for FY25 and have a remote learning plan in preparation for any emergency closures. A program may not offer remote learning without an approved remote learning plan. And if you do not have a remote learning plan to offer, when there is emergency closures, you may not bill for those closed days. Remote learning plans will need to be approved by OCF prior to the program's start. All providers must confirm their plans for remote learning online, and the link will be in the weekly provider update as well. So recruit and retaining qualified staff. We want to go over information on staff qualifications. PHL pre-K credentials are aligned with the state's career pathway. And as you can see this chart on the screen, to the left is the PHL pre-K credential requirements. A child care center director or administrator, a lead teacher, they must have a minimum of a level B on the career pathway. This also applies to owner or operators of a family providers acting as a lead teacher. For assistant teachers, they will need to have a minimum of a level A or above. So to the right on the chart, the career pathway are the career pathway levels. Staff must meet one of the qualifications in a level in order to be sufficient. As a level A, you'll need to obtain one of the following. You need to hold a current child development associate, which is a CDA certificate from the Council of Professional Recognition, a current school age credential, or 9 early childhood education credits. As a level B, you'll need an Associate of Arts, Associate of Science, a Bachelor of Arts, or a Bachelor of Science, and 18 ECE credits if the degree is in an approved related field. Otherwise, you will need 30 ECE credits if the degree is stated to be unrelated. Level B does also include elementary education degree with 12 ECE credits. So in addition to the educational requirements, staff will also need to meet DHS regulations.
And then we know that staff may need waivers as well if they qualify for them. The majority of it is the same as last year. So this applies to directors, lead teacher, and assistant teachers. Also applies to a lead teacher position for family childcare in the case where the family childcare owner operated does not serve as that full-time lead teacher. Individuals applying for the waiver must meet one of the following to be considered for approval. So they need to have a verified career pathway level of Rising A. That's verified by the PA key. Be enrolled to attain required EC credits or have a CDA certificate. If they're not already enrolled, they must be enrolled no later than January 31st, 2025. Evidence of enrollment in that education program must be loaded into the PD registry. If they are applying for the assistant teacher waiver, individuals must obtain a CDA or 9 credits within 1 year. Individuals need to meet DHS requirements for the position they're holding, and the status of an enrollment will be reviewed in January. And if individuals have not enrolled for those programs, then their waiver may be rescinded. What's new this year is that individuals that have completed coursework toward their CDA, CDF credits or 120 hours, but have not completed the portfolio or assessment components toward obtaining a CDA may qualify for a waiver. And these individuals must demonstrate evidence that they are in a CDA completion program or have applied for the assessment. And then, oh, I'm sorry. Can you go back one? Just that last note on the slide, on that previous slide, is that individuals who had approved waiver in the prior program year and who have not completed the requirements prior to September 1st, 2024, need to reapply to demonstrate they're still actively engaged in attaining those credentials. And then for the temporary exemption, oh, Theo, can you go back one? Okay, thank you. Temporary exemption criteria, this is exactly the same as last year. So if they do not meet the minimum career pathway level, but meet the following criteria, they will not have to complete a staff qualifications waiver and will qualify for temporary exemption for next year. These individuals should also have a plan in place to obtain the required EC credits. So the director, administrator, family childcare owner operator, and lead teacher, those are individuals with a degree of an AA or higher in a related field with fewer than 18 EC credits and were employed at the PHL Pre-K legal entity prior to July 1st, 2022. And the assistant teacher, individuals with at least 6 EC credits, but fewer than 9 EC credits who were employed at the legal entity prior to July 1st, 2022, when this change happened.
So now we'll go over resources and next steps. PHMC will be holding virtual office hours to assist providers with contracts, exhibits, and questions on waivers and online submissions. Specific dates and times will be released in the coming weeks as we are made available, and they'll also be in the weekly provider update for them to get our reminders as well. Contacting the PHL Pre-K intermediary. If your providers have any questions or inquiries, please reference this contact sheet. Please note, we will be sending out the PowerPoint slide later, and by all means, they can always direct all their questions to the PHL Pre-K inbox for us to see as well.
There is one question in the chat. So will Spark still have access to open water to see the exhibits to support, or only if a referral is made? So you'll only need the policy if a referral is made. Unfortunately, you will not have access to open water this year, just because last year Spark coaches reviewed exhibits and were assigned providers through like a judging form. And so we aren't able to do that again this year. So we do use a similar process as you normally do with providers, and talking with the provider, requesting the document from them, and then going from there. And then in our bi-weekly meetings with Spark in that group, hopefully we will definitely talk about those that maybe are more resistant to engaging with Spark, or have not been doing what they're supposed to be doing in revising those exhibits, and then our team, provider services team, can help reach out to them. Okay, I think the next section is Spark talking about their supports.
Good morning. My camera just went out, so I apologize for that. My name is Dina Short. For those that don't know me, Deputy Director here at Spark for Coaching and Technical Assistance. So the QSC will review the following contract exhibits: family grievance policy, kindergarten transition, and suspension and expulsion policies.
Dina,
The code,
sorry, Dina, we
yes.
just made a little edit on the slides to that was the Spark team will not be reviewing those policies this year.
Okay. If a referral is made, review specific policies to provide feedback, recommendations, and suggestions. The coaches will also share the Ocdale resource around prevention guidance for suspension and expulsion. We will also share the School District of Philadelphia's kindergarten timeline, and we are always also available to support any community events around enrollment. Next slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Dina. Along with our coaching team, we have our content specialists. And again, they are the team that develop and provide professional development opportunities throughout the year. And so as we're thinking about these contract exhibits, we really want to provide some upcoming professional development opportunities to support providers in, yes, keeping in mind what those special consideration are for those various pieces, but also ensuring that providers understand how to put those policies and systems into practice. So we have upcoming professional development opportunities in business, like Ultimate Guide to Onboard New Staff or Strategies for Marketing Your EC Business. We have topics, opportunities available in family community engagement, like building stronger partnerships with families or how to recruit and retain families, and also including social emotional development, like mindfulness for children and caregivers, how to foster social and emotional skills through storytelling. We are in the midst of rolling out some new on-demand trainings or e-learning courses that will be available through the PD registry. Some topics that we hope to feature are things like best practices for writing policies and procedures and elements of budgeting. Beyond that, there's other ways to access resources such as through our Knowledge Center and help desks, again, available 24/7, live help desk support during regular business hours, and also, of course, connect with your coaches to get any other specialized supports that our content team can offer.
Okay, so coming soon, the next steps would be from Spark coaches. We'll be sending out our welcome letter to returning and also the new providers, reminding them to look out and participate in our intake interest survey. And also information about our PHL pre-K teacher orientation that will begin the week of August 19th. There will be PD offerings that week for both new and returning teachers. Thank you.
This is just a visual of that Knowledge Center I mentioned earlier and through a link in the chat. At the very top are some navigation bars. And then at the very bottom is a search bar so that you could just type in any keywords defining the resources that you're looking for. And then this is just a kind of like a visual picture that just shows how our events calendar works for any providers that access our events calendar. There's two ways to really register. Go to our events calendar, pick a professional development opportunity coming up, and it will redirect provider or participant to the events page. If the participant's already in our account system, it will actually pre-populate their information into that registration form. If not, then they'll just manually enter it. And actually from there, it actually gets added into our system so that moving forward, it's already automated. And then every participant should be receiving a confirmation email after they register. So lastly, otherwise, to reach out to us, visit our website, our Spark for the Pre-K website, and also our help desk. Here's our number and email, and also the hours when they are available. All right. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, Christina. So next steps, what, when, and where. I know we've communicated a plethora of information over this whole training session. So here are the overview of just like some important dates to come. As we stated, the exhibits, the required policy, and other fiscal documents. Or the documents will be July 30th. And that will be online submission form. Any remote learning plans, and this is for all providers, that also will be due July 30th. The curriculum assessment developmental screening waivers, and if it's applicable, will also be due July 30th. And staff qualification waiver, July 30th as well. And any updates to the contact information form, we want to ask that we just communicate to the providers to make sure that is ongoing throughout the whole fiscal year, just so we're having correspondence with the correct people as changes are needed and or made. Any more questions?
Yes, I do have a question. And maybe it's more a statement. Since Spark, okay, so Spark has the potential of receiving referrals for any exhibit. Am I understanding that correctly
No,
or no?
it will be for mainly the required policies. So the exhibit,
Okay.
the provider services team reviews that, and
Okay.
will follow up with providers. Those we need to turn around really fast.
Okay.
So that's why our team usually does it. So we want to make sure to
Okay.
get those done so that we can get a contract out to the provider.
Awesome. For any referrals that we receive, since we will not have access to see those policies, you know, we have to try to get them from the provider. It is going to be so helpful for any referrals that we do see that there are details and the specific need in order to support. You know, it's just going to be necessary. The other thing, and this is just really out of curiosity around attendance, I heard the word sign in, sign out sheets many times. And so I'm just curious, are providers, like, are we saying that they have to have a physical sign in, sign out sheet? Or are they able to generate reports from like Bright Wheel?
They can definitely generate reports.
Okay, I was just curious. Thank
So
you.
we've just had a number of issues with attendance this past year and recouping funds. And so we just want to make a conscious effort to be on top of it and try to get providers early in the right space.
Thank you, Carrie.
Sure. Oh, and I should say, so on your other one about having details in the referral, so our provider services team, as they're looking through each policy, we do have the judging form and criteria in there. So we can potentially look at what we can do to provide some of those details in the bulk referral about what's left, what's missing.
Awesome, perfect. Thanks again.
Any other questions? All right, well, that's it for us. Again, we will send out the recording of this and the PowerPoint slides as well for this session for you all to reference, and then to also pass along to anybody who missed the session. And if you do have any questions as you move along that you think of, you know, please feel free to reach out and send it to us. Okay, thanks
Thank
all.
you.
Have a great day.